Forget about buying expensive dollhouse furniture. Today, let's create an adorable and realistic miniature bed from very simple supplies you probably already have on hand. First, I'll be using scrap cardstock, which I really needed to thin out. This will be a good way to use up a bunch of small pieces, and my drawer of scraps looks much better now. Besides the cardstock scraps, I'll be using some recycled copy paper, possibly a piece of foam board for the mattress, some graph paper to draw out the design. A small pair of scissors would be helpful, but it's not necessary, and these are new to me. I really like them. They are the manicure scissors that have the little curve. A large diameter bamboo skewer, and a pencil, of course, and some Q-tips, and Elmer's glue all. To create a pattern, I've marked my center line, which will be the fold line. I've come over 1 5/8 inches from the center. I'm going to have it curved down and blend in to the 1/2 inch mark. So something like that. And then I'm just going to fold it down the center. Hey, you may want yours to have a completely different shape. I saw something that inspired me, and that's where I'm getting my idea from. Once it's folded in half, make a mark 1/16 of an inch from the edge. Just put a little mark, and we will connect the dots. To make my pattern stronger, I'm gluing it down to some cardstock first. It's also easier for me to trace around cardstock than just plain paper. I'm tracing my pattern onto cardstock twice to create the top part of the headboard. I'm cutting on the inside of the line and not the outside. That way I don't change the size accidentally. Then I glue the pieces down again, cut and repeat until they are as thick as I wanted them. I believe I did 5 layers. I created the bottom bar of the headboard the very same way as I did the top. I traced, cut, and glued as many layers as I did before. I have 2 top and 2 bottom headboard pieces now. For the bedpost, I cut 2 strips of copy paper at 2 5/8 by 11 for the headboard and 2 strips at 2 1/4 by 11 for the footboard. I am curling each one of the strips to make it easier to roll them. I put a little bit of glue on the paper to help secure it as I first start rolling. I am using a skewer to help me start rolling the paper. Once I get it started, I remove the skewer. Then I just continue to roll the paper, holding it with my fingers. I glue one long edge of the paper to hold it and keep it from unraveling. Then I roll up the rest of the strips the very same way. I lightly sand the seam to make it less noticeable. I made a mark on each one of the posts 3/16 of an inch down from the top and 1/2 inch from the bottom. I am using Aleene's Fast Grab tacky glue. I am also using a piece of small corrugated cardboard to help me glue the headboard pieces onto the post using the marks that I made. I feel like the cardboard helps keep the headboard pieces glued more to the center of the post. There are just a couple of very small gaps, and I fill those with some glue. Then I just use my finger to smooth it out. I'm using the grid on my cutting mat to line up with the bottom of the bottom board of the headboard, and then I just lay my ruler down on the 1/2 inch marks and make a little mark to know where to glue the Q-tips. I cut and glue the Q-tips one at a time because each one of them will be different. The bottom of the Q-tip is straight, but as I mark the cut line, the top will usually have a little bit of an angle. I use these quilling strips from a previous pattern to create the foot and the decorated top for each post. I will put in the description the order and the pieces that I used if you're interested. If you don't feel like paper quilling, beads would work as well too. I am painting with some wood glue to smooth things out. Mod Podge would be fine too. Here are the bed rails and the slats. I marked 1/2 inch in from each end to glue the first slat, and then the remaining slats I just evenly spaced in between those two. It's probably best to let the glue dry first, but I was just really impatient to glue the remaining side rail on. Using the marks already on the post, I glue the side rail section to the headboard. When it's completely dry, I glue the footboard the very same way. I decided to paint my bed a very light pink. This bed will be going into Aunt Clara's house, and I thought that would go really well with the room. I will be using foam board to make the mattress after all, and I glued 3 layers together to create the mattress. I think that's a pretty good height. Here is a list of materials that I used for the bedding. Using scrap quilt batting and Elmer's Craft Bond glue stick, I covered the long sides and the top of the foam board mattress. And I made sure to trim away any extra that hung over the sides. I didn't cover the ends because I didn't think it was necessary. You wouldn't see it that much. I cut a piece of fabric a little larger than the mattress to be the bottom sheet. Using the same glue stick, I fold over and glue the long sides. I had to trim off the fabric on the ends. They were a little bit too long. For the ends, I wrapped and glued just like wrapping a package. They really won't be seen in the end. And here is the finished mattress. Thankfully, it still fits after adding the batting on the sides. I will be using this strip of fabric for the bed skirt. I ripped instead of cutting the fabric to get that frayed look on the edge. By doing it that way, it reduces bulk and hopefully it will lay more naturally. I run a gathering stitch on the ends to gather the fabric. Once I'm finished with the gathering, I evenly distribute the ruffles. I don't cut my gathering threads just yet. I'm checking to see if I'm happy with the amount of ruffling. Using some Aleene's Fast Grab tacky glue, I glue the ruffle near the top edge of the mattress on one side only. Then, using my tweezers, I press the ruffles gently into the glue. I repeat that process for the foot and the remaining side of the bed, making sure to keep the corners open. I put the mattress back onto the bed, making sure the ruffles are hanging properly. I had to gently pull the ruffles into place on the corners carefully. Now I am creating a very simple comforter for the bed. It's basically 2 different rectangles. I'm using 2 different types of fabric, but you could also just use one as well. With right sides together, I'm hand sewing the 2 long sides and a short end. I leave an opening for turning on the other short end, like this. I clip my corners off on an angle before I turn it right side out. Once it's turned right side out, I use a skewer to gently push the points of my corners out. I'm being careful so I don't push the skewer through the fabric. Then, using an iron, I press it to look nice and flat. To create a really cute quilt, I cut several 1-inch strips of fabric. I used a mix of solid and print fabrics. I'm going to be using what is referred to as strip quilting. I want a checkerboard pattern, so I'm sewing some groups of fabric are 2 prints and a solid down the middle, and then vice versa. That way, when I cut 1-inch strips from the group of 3 and sew those together, it will create a checkerboard design. Of course, if I didn't want that design, I would just use different fabrics for each of the strips. I chose to hand sew because I didn't feel like getting my machine out, and I also find hand sewing very relaxing. I also pressed my seams open. I made 1-inch marks to cut strips across the 3 strips like so. I handled them very gently so I wouldn't disturb the seams. Once I have all of my groups of 3 cut out, I decide what groups to sew together to make the checkerboard pattern, but without a lot of repeats. I carefully line up my seams and put a sewing pin in there to hold it, but very careful so you don't disturb your stitches. And then I hand sew across that line. And once it's finished, and then I press it open, and then I just keep sewing until I have my blocks like so. Only press with a hot iron, not steam, because it can distort your blocks. And if you happen to have where your seams don't line up exactly just right, don't worry about it too much because you really can't tell in the end with the finished quilt top. I cut a backing for the quilt just like the comforter. I stitched all the way around, leaving an opening to turn it. I really wanted it to feel and look like a quilt. Using some contrasting thread, I ran some running stitches across the top to give it that hand-quilted appearance. I wanted to do something interesting and cute to the edges, so I decided to finish it off with a blanket stitch. I think that's just what it needed. It turned out so cute, and I'm very pleased with the fabrics I chose to use. It's time to make the bed. I tuck the end of the comforter over the edge of the foot of the bed. Using Aleene's fast grab glue, I glued the corners down on each side. I folded the comforter back a little to expose the bottom sheet. Then using Aleene's fast grab again, I glued the sides down to the bed. Or I should say the mattress, really. Here's how it looks before adding the quilt. I could really just stop with this. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I fold the quilt the way I like it and I glue it into place. Then I place it on the foot of the bed and I anchor it on the sides just like I did the comforter. I made a couple of oversized pillows that I may add pillowcases to later on. I am not super happy with this pillow. I think it's a bit too big, so I will probably replace it later. Now let's see how it looks in Aunt Claire's room. I'm not really sure how I want to arrange it in the room. I was thinking about here on a diagonal, but I also think it might look nice on this wall up next to the bathroom. I just don't know. I guess I'll have to decide sometime. I'm going to leave it on a diagonal for now. I am very happy with how this bed turned out. It looks adorable in this room. What's nice is I didn't glue the mattress to the bed frame at all, so I could pop it out if I wanted a change or for different seasons, since all the bedding and skirting is glued to the mattress. I hope I've given you some inspiration and ideas to make yourself a bed. Oh, and let me know, do you like the bed on an angle or up against the wall? Thank you all so much for watching. See you next time.